Hello and welcome to this episode of our podcast. And today I'm joined by Rachel Young, who is my favourite therapist. And I've known Rachel for a number of years and her advice is always amazing. So it's lovely to have you here today, Rachel. Thank you for joining us. Please, could you just tell our listeners a little bit about you, what you do, and how you can start to open the conversation about suicide?
Okay, yes. So thank you for having me here today, Nikki. I'm your favourite therapist. Thank you for that. So my name is Rachel Young, as Nikki said, and I work as a counsellor, hypnotherapist, psychotherapist in private practice and do some charity work on the side as well. So I've been in private practice or working as a therapist for many, many years. And suicide is such an important topic to talk about, but also a topic that many people are not sure how to talk about. And it always comes from a good place, of not wanting to say the wrong thing, not wanting to make things worse.
Yeah, and thank you for that because it's so true, isn't it? We see changes maybe in somebody, we want to talk about it. Maybe we see somebody even on the other side of the railings, on the wrong side of the railings, as I would call them, and we're still just unsure of how to open that conversation. So it'd be great if you could share any tips or stories that you have that could illustrate how people listening can open up that conversation if they're worried about somebody.
Yeah, I think what's really important is not to overcomplicate it. People are worried about saying the wrong thing, and sometimes just saying something is the best thing to do, and I get it. You see somebody in an extreme vulnerable situation and you're worried that you'll make it worse. But what is key, I think, always is just getting a point of connection. However you do that, just letting somebody know that you're there or that you care, or even a hello, what's going on? Or I just thought I'd say hi, or do you mind if I just sit with you a moment? That can make a difference. If you think about it, when somebody is suicidal, and you'll know this if you've felt that way yourself or lived with someone or been around somebody who is in that depth of pain, is that you feel quite powerless.
Mm.
But you can quite simply, just by saying a few words, you can interrupt that stream of thought. So if somebody is really focused on, maybe they've made plans to take their life, they've made the decision to do it. So they're very focused on that. Just even a few words can interrupt that thought, and that can give you a little bit of an in to maybe let a little bit of light in. If you think of it that way, how can I just let a little bit of light in, no matter how small? So even something really simple can help somebody. And I understand, that there's often a fear around that, as we've said. If you can find a way to put that fear aside and ask them, what's going on? What are you thinking right now? What are your plans right now? And saying the words, are you thinking about suicide? That actually can really open things up for somebody who is in that place. They may not have been asked that before because people are too afraid to ask it. So finding the courage to say those words. Is this something that you've been thinking about? They can say no, great, or they might say yes. And then what do you do? Well, actually, they may then start talking, or something simple such as, tell me about that. I'm here to listen.
Mm.
Just a few words can make a difference.
Yeah, I love the way you describe that as that light. So, especially
Mm.
for the visual people that are listening today, just opening that door. It doesn't have to be like, bang, we're coming through the door. It's like that gentle opening, small crack in the door, letting that light in that
Mm.
might just infiltrate that person's darkness. And you talked about pain as well, that often people who are thinking about suicide are in a very deep pain.
Mm.
And when people are in that much pain, certainly I've found from my experience, is that it can be quite challenging to have those conversations with them, and they might shut off and they
Yeah.
might internalize. And you also talked about fear, what we fear. So I'd just like to address those two things. First of all, can you share a little bit more about the pain from your experience of talking to people and your years in your work, of what that pain might feel like, might look like, and why people shut down and might not respond?
Yeah. And I think, it's not a generic thing,
Mm.
but there are a lot of things in common when people are in that very dark place, or however you describe it. Clients of mine have described it as an all-consuming darkness, so they're at the bottom of a pit. These are just some of the ways I've heard it, at the bottom of the pit, and there's no way to climb out. People who are feeling suicidal or having thoughts of suicide will often talk about the fact that they're a burden. That's often a key word. They feel like they're a burden. They're in a place of such darkness that nobody can actually comprehend or understand or indeed reach them. Which is why I talk about that little bit of light, because even if you can shine a little bit in and find just something, it just gives them a moment to maybe breathe, or maybe to be able to begin to see just a little bit of perspective, or maybe even to begin to just hear you.
Mm.
Also, this is one of the dangerous points of suicide. I know that sounds like a strange thing to say, but sometimes when people have actually made the decision to take their life, you will notice there's a lightness because that decision's been made. So it can feel lighter. So it's not always that somebody will be in this deep, dark place. They sort of are, but the decision is made. So there's a lightness there. But if you have noticed any change, or you notice any unusual behavior, or you hear language around, I'm a burden, nobody can understand me, nobody can help me, then start those conversations, have those conversations.
Mm. And that's really interesting what you just said that there about that lightness, because I've noticed when having conversations with people in crisis who have been suicidal, when they've made the decision, and I think we can all relate to this, because sometimes decision making is the hard part, and you make the decision and you get that lightness. And if I had not had the experiences that I've had, I might be listening to this and thinking, oh, hang on, stop. I don't want to help that person make that decision because I
Yeah.
don't want to be responsible for it. What would you say to that?
hmm You can't make things any worse.
Hmm.
And this is the fear thing, isn't it? What if I say the thing that just tips them over the edge, and they take action from that?
Mm.
What's important, if we take the words out of it, what's important is that you are there. So there's a connection.
Mm.
So when people are in that place of the pain, or in that lighter place, it's as if many people that I've worked with, nobody can reach them, and they can't reach them. So, if we push the words aside and forget the words for a moment, because we can stumble and worry about those, but just being there, handing somebody a cup of tea, saying, I'm here to listen. It's the fact that somebody cares, that somebody's giving them the time, and that somebody is willing to reach out and try and connect is what matters. But
Mm.
even if you do stumble over your words, it's okay. You're there, and you're trying to have that conversation, you're trying to make that connection.
Mm. And I think that's really interesting because you've touched on the human factor there. You've touched
Mm,
on that relationship of just being with somebody, of
yeah,
just spending time in that space with somebody when they need you.
yeah.
And and actually, I mean, communication is as a whole is there's so much in communication, and one of those aspects is just being present.
Mm, And that's it. That's what is key. And I know another thing, and I know this isn't in your question, but you quite often hear people saying, thinking about the human side, suicide is selfish, and they're stupid for doing that. And I get that, because people don't know what to do. It's a hugely emotive subject that impacts so many people.
Mm.
But I would argue actually that suicide from the person that's in that place is probably, in their mind, the least selfish thing that they can feel that they can do in that moment in time.
Mm.
because they're no longer a burden, and they're no longer, worrying people, and people no longer have to carry the guilt and all of that. So actually it's quite the opposite of that.
Mm. And that's fascinating because I remember a family of my member of mine who was suicidal, and they said exactly the same thing to me. They said, "You see, I'm so selfish, I can't even take my own life and not be here as a burden to other people." Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
Mm.
Interesting. So if I was a listener and I came across this and I'd noticed a change in behavior, can you I'm just going to get us to focus on young people on this, Rachel. And the reason I say that is because I've worked with you when we've talked about how to negotiate with your teenager. And some of the things that you said were fascinating about what is normal teenage behavior and actually what isn't. And I think, especially as parents and carers, we can confuse the two a little bit. So I'm wondering if you could just shine a light for us, highlight those areas.
Yes, I think this is a whole different conversation,
No,
isn't it?
yeah, I know, yeah.
Communicating with a teenager. I have a few of those. The tips don't always work, but what's important is that as adults, we think from an adult brain. The teenage brain is still developing. Teenagers have their own language, they have their whole own language, don't they? So it's about, if we can imagine almost being able to really listen, to notice the language that they're using, to notice the behaviors, and find a way to almost step into their shoes, to step into their world of language, their map, which
Mm,
will be different from ours. Quite often, when teenagers say something, like the old eye rolling thing, it's like, did you just roll your eyes at me? Well, actually, eye rolling is a stress relief. It's a pattern interrupt. So understanding how your teenager communicates, understanding what's normal for them and what's not, can really help you to step into their world and understand things from their perspective. So ask those questions. You might get a meh or a grunt, but what matters is that that teenager then won't. We often think, well, they'll just dismiss us, they're not listening. It's often not the case.
mm,
They'll often go away and think about what you've said or process what you've said and hear you. And even if you're asking the questions, well, what do you mean by that? Can you explain that to me? Rather than in that place of reaction, I know we're all humans, but trying to understand that, then you can really help young people. And we know that certain parts of their brain aren't as developed as adult parts of the brain. They've still got, so there can be more impulse control. There can be, less thought about consequences, which is why for young people, sometimes when we're talking about suicide, that decision can be made just like that.
right.
And I don't mean it's necessarily made just like that. You can see the signs, and it could be something that's, they've been thinking about for some time, but the risk can be they make the decision just like that because of how their brain is wired. And we don't say that to panic people. What we're saying is actually, as soon as you notice a difference, you might notice that they're behaving different. They're isolating themselves away. They're becoming more angry, maybe beginning to self-harm or something like that, or medicating with alcohol or drugs or something. Have that conversation as early as possible, or
Mm,
as soon as you can. If you haven't had that conversation, have it now and just check in.
yeah.
What's going on for you? What are you thinking right now? And if you can always ask that question, are you having thoughts of suicide or of harming yourself in some way?
Mm,
If you do have that connection and that relationship with a young person, it is always worth, the Samaritans and other people have them as well on their website. They have a safety plan where you can sit and there's questions to go through. Who's your point of contact? What's one thing? And that's what I always say to people, what's one thing that's going to keep you alive? They'll often find one thing. If
mm,
they can't, you can help them to talk about that. But there's a whole list of questions so that you can give that to the young person or whoever you're talking to
mm,
and say, okay, when this feels really, really bad, when you feel that you're going to take action to take your life, go to this first and just read through this, contact this person, have this thought, take that action. So that's always worth having and working through with somebody if you've got the privilege to do that with
Mm.
somebody who is feeling suicidal.
Thanks for that, Rachel. I didn't actually know that either from all the work I've done. That I didn't realize that was on their website. We always give the details of Samaritans, Shouts, and there's one other which you'll find at the end of these episodes that you can go and speak to somebody there as well if
Mm.
you are struggling still to have that conversation, or if you've come here because you are feeling suicidal.
Mhm.
And the other thing that you've really highlighted through today's conversation is about listening.
Yeah.
And when we talk about listening, now, I don't know about you, but I thought I was a great listener before I became a hostage and crisis negotiator. And suddenly they taught me a whole load of new skills. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't really listen. I'm definitely not listening for what I'm not hearing.
Yeah.
I'm just listening to the superficial words. So, what do we mean by listening? How can people practice their listening skills?
By being quiet. It's not really that straightforward. Often, and this I know this is something you talk about, Nikki, as well. When somebody's talking, we're often thinking we've got our own conversation going on often, haven't we? As though, well, what do I need to say next? Or, oh, what point do I need to get across? If we can, and obviously that's going to be there, but if we can push that back a little bit and just really try and listen to the words, maybe the emotion, but really just try and connect with what's being said because it's okay to not be ready to respond. We can have a pause. You can say, let me just have a moment just to think about what you said. But, communicating, actually, your answer is based on the response you've just got, not what's in your mind ready to share, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if somebody says to you, I'm feeling so distressed right now, you can just leave that there, give them a pause to continue, or even say, you're feeling really distressed. Just repeating those words back. You don't have to have the answers.
Mm.
Really, what you're looking to do is just to hold that person so that you can connect in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that because I do think we worry so much about what to say. And also, especially when you're emotionally attached to somebody.
Mm.
That's really hard because you just want to like make it all better. You want to problem solve, you want to fix it, you want to take the pain away. And one of the biggest lessons I learned as a negotiator, and I'll always remember this, an FBI guy, really experienced, he said this to me. He said, Nick, you cannot change other people. You
Yeah,
cannot change other people. As much as we want to fix it,
yeah, yeah.
sometimes, it has to be the other person's free will to change something.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think the point that you made there about this can be really so painful for, the parent or the friend or the grandparent. It can be a really painful conversation,
Mm,
but it can also bring a little bit of relief with it when you've managed to make a connection or have a conversation. It's like, okay, we've got a bit of an in now,
mm,
even if that's really, really tiny. But my goodness, yeah, trying to hold yourself together whilst that person is in so much pain or in such a dark place, and you just want to reach in and say, "Come on, I'll hold you here. I'll pull you out of that."
yeah.
Then on the other side of things, and I know my mind's going somewhere else now, but thinking about connection in the community,
Mm,
just saying hello to somebody in the street can make a difference. Sort of where I started, actually, let's keep it simple. Sometimes out and about, you see somebody who doesn't look great. Hello, mate. You're right. How are you doing today? That can make a difference. They can walk away from that and actually think, maybe I will live another day. So
mm.
you can make a difference in so many different ways.
Yeah, yeah. And we know that isolation and feeling lonely is one of the biggest causes of suicide.
Yeah.
So yeah, just that human interaction. I mean, we are human beings and we like interaction with other human beings. That's how we're designed. And so yeah, just stopping and saying to somebody, "How are you today?" and then listening, giving them the space can just 5, 10 minutes can make a massive difference in somebody else's life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So if we summarize today's conversation,
Mm.
right at the very beginning, we talked about my favorite thing. I'm going to borrow that with pride, Rachel. Thank you for that. Was just opening the door. So not overthinking it,
Yeah.
not being too concerned about words, especially to start with,
Mm.
and holding the space for somebody, giving
Mm.
them a bit of light, giving them a space where they know that you are listening. And when we talk about listening, you talk about, listening not to fix, not
Mm.
to think about, or what am I going to say next? What am I going to say next? Because it's not about you, it's
Mhm. Yeah.
about the other person. And we're very, very good at making it all about us, of course.
Yeah.
Also, especially if you're emotionally attached and you just want to go in and rescue
Yeah.
and fix the problems, that holding the space is actually a much better thing to do, and open up that conversation and allow them to talk about suicide freely. Early check-in, I love that with the teenagers, and I really do think we're going to have to do a full episode on teenage brains and
Mhm.
why, as a teenager, we communicate in a very different way, because I think that will help people to understand
Yeah.
that it's okay. A lot of the times with teenagers, well, oh, I don't want to say the wrong thing, or they're really angry. That why are they always angry? Why are they always in their room? What's the difference between that? I'm frightened of that. So it probably we'll do a whole episode on that. And then in conclusion, we just came all the way round again that even if you're meeting a stranger for the first time in the street and you
Mm.
just notice something, let's just have a conversation. Let's just have a human connection and treat each other with kindness and respect. And you actually will make a heck of a difference in someone else's life.
Absolutely. And we often don't know the difference that we make. That's the thing. I think if people could know that that conversation there actually made a big difference to someone else's life and that connection there actually made their day, we would probably do it more.
Mm.
But just remembering that you never quite know what the difference that you've made is that day just by having that brief conversation with somebody.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely way to end it, Rachel. Thank you so much. Now, how can people get hold of you? Where can they find you if they'd like to have a conversation with you, or if they've been touched by something that you've said, or they can just find out a little bit more about you? How can they find you?
So you can call me, you can ping me an email, you can check out my website if you want to. So my website is phoenixhypno.com, and we'll put the number somewhere below here. You can even text me if you want to, however you want to get in touch. Then if you've got any questions, you're interested in doing any work together, anything at all, then just get in touch.
Great. I'll make sure that I've got your email and your phone number, and I'll put that in the summary that goes with the podcast.
Thank
Thank you
you.
again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nikki. Take care.
If you have in any way been affected by today's podcast episode, there are numbers at the end of the transcript which you can contact. We'd like to thank you all for listening. And if you'd like to join our Facebook group, there is also a link to that in the notes that go with this podcast. Have a great day.